What's up, Broncos country? Welcome back inside the UC Health Training Center for today's episode of Broncos Now. Team reporter and host Sydney Jones here. And coming up on today's episode, we'll hear from head coach Nathaniel Hackett and take a look at this week's final injury report. Plus, Broncos lead writer Aric DiLalla joins the show for a game preview. All that and more coming up. The Broncos are back at Empower Field at Mile High in just 2 days as they are set to host the New York Jets on Sunday. Head coach Nathaniel Hackett announced today that Russell Wilson is listed as questionable heading into Sunday's game and will be a game-time decision. Coach Hackett details how Russell has looked at practice this week.
Good. He's a grinder. I mean, he works hard. He's tough. I mean, that's who he is. He fights through everything.
Coach Hackett also discusses backup quarterback Brett Rippon's potential and how he's looked at practice this week.
Good. He's taken advantage of those, and he's gotten better whether he plays or not. I think it's so valuable to get any reps you can, especially with the starting group.
He also detailed how he'll go about making that decision on Sunday.
It's so important to have the communication with him. I think first and foremost, I want to be sure that we're doing the right thing for him, which then essentially helps the entire team. And I know he's going to do the right thing. I'm going to do the right thing. Our entire organization, the medical staff has been great. George has been great. Greg Penner has been great. I mean, just the whole group on just kind of making sure we're doing all the right stuff with Russ.
Plus, Coach Hackett discussed how the guys have responded this week and how critical this game is.
Good. Every game is critical, and we want to be sure that we're always putting ourselves in position to win. We've been in tight games. I mean, 2 overtime games in a row. We just have to bring it together so that we can win those close games now.
And now let's take a look at this week's final injury report. The Broncos will be without cornerback Isang Bassi as Coach Hackett ruled him out today. Safety Caden Stearns is doubtful, and then defensive lineman Deshaun Williams, defensive tackle DJ Jones, guard and center Quinn Miners, inside linebacker Josie Jewell, and quarterback Russell Wilson are listed as questionable. Now joining me here inside the Broncos podcast studio for a game preview is Broncos lead writer Aric DiLalla. Aric, Coach Hackett announced that Russell Wilson is questionable for Sunday's game, and he will be a game-time decision. We heard earlier in the show from him. How are you feeling? Are you worried at all?
Well, I mean, I think anytime your starting quarterback, your franchise quarterback, is limited all week in practice, is a questionable to play in the game, there is some level of concern. Clearly, it's serious enough that Brett Rippon and Russell Wilson received reps with the starters on Friday. That's according to Nathaniel Hackett. So clearly the Broncos are, there's at least some degree of concern. They're worried enough that they're getting Brett Rippon ready to play. And, you're not quite sure why Brett Rippon gets reps. I mean, it could be the fact that Russell Wilson just isn't healthy enough to take all the reps, or it could be, hey, Russell's been taking all of these reps all of training camp, all offseason, all season long. So if Brett has to go in there, you have to make sure he's ready. And so getting him reps just on the off chance that he's got to play, whether that's starting or, if Russell were to aggravate this injury and Brett had to come in. So it's hard to say, there were no questions about why Brett Rippon took reps, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that Brett Rippon is the favorite to start. It just means that they're getting him ready just in case.
If Brett Rippon does have to go in, what have you seen from him, Aric, that you like, whether that's, from the preseason or just the time that he's been here with the Broncos?
Yeah, I mean, I think, he has a little bit of starting experience. Obviously, that one game against the Jets. He got a win. But I think with Brett, he has the tools to play in this offense. He's able to get outside the pocket, kind of roll out and make those throws. He's not going to scramble around the same way that Russ will. He's not going to extend plays kind of in that same fashion, but he's able to execute this offense. Obviously, we saw in the preseason and training camp, he can throw the ball down the field, throws a nice deep ball, which is a part of this offense as well. So I think you have confidence in Brett from the standpoint of he's been in this league for a couple of years now. He's learned behind Russell Wilson here for the last few months since Russ got to Denver. He does have a little bit of experience. He's gotten some reps with the starters, which Nathaniel Hackett said whether or not he plays is valuable for him moving forward. I think the question with Brett is just, can he avoid those mistakes? Because that's, it's hard when you get out there and the speed is a little bit faster than it was in training camp or the preseason. He's not going to have a lot of time to adjust to that. So can he avoid the interceptions that kind of plagued him in that start against the Jets a couple of years ago? He's obviously a couple years more developed, smarter, wiser. Would think he'd be able to avoid kind of the silly mistakes. but still he'll be challenged, and Russell will too. They're going to be tested by this Jets defense, and so not going to be easy for either one of those guys.
Well, Aric, we heard earlier in the week from Coach Hackett, he said that Melvin Gordon was going to be the starter this week, but I know we saw Latavius Murray take most of the carries on Monday versus the Chargers. How do you think those two guys will split the carries maybe this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to give guys both an opportunity again, which is what they did do that last week. Melvin got a couple of carries, and then they went away from the running game a little bit, got back to it with Latavius Murray. I truly think it's going to be a hot hand approach. So if Melvin goes out, and again, he can't push because that's when the fumbles have happened. But you'd like to see, can you get that first carry for 5 or 6 yards, and then can you avoid a negative carry? Those things are important, I think, to staying on the field, to having the coaches believe in you, to get that trust. I think the big thing that's interesting to me, Sydney, is that Melvin kind of has this big play potential, right? And the Broncos have moved away a little bit from the outside zone just because there's been some negative plays when they run a stretch outside or they toss it outside. And so they've avoided the outside zone, and that takes away the chance for negative plays. But it also, Nathaniel Hackett said a couple days ago, it takes away the chance for some really big plays. And instead they're running the inside zone, which takes away the negatives, but you're limiting the kind of the big play potential. And maybe in the inside zone, that's where guys can rip the ball out. That's where you need a big body to kind of fall forward. Mm-hmm. That might lend itself better to Latavius Murray. And so, I'm not sure one way or another. It's quite possible Melvin could play well early in the game and be the hot hand and keep going. But I would suspect, my guess at least, is that Latavius Murray continues to probably get the bulk of the carries.
Well, in general, Aric, how important is it for this offense to really get this run game going?
Yeah, it's critical, especially if Brett Rippon has to play. Right. The one thing you cannot do is put Brett in 3rd and 10. It's one thing to put Russell Wilson there. Mm-hmm. He's able to scramble around, make things happen. Yeah. He's a veteran. He's seen just about everything in this league, but especially if Brett Rippon has to play, to ask a young quarterback to thrive in 3rd and long, it's just not sustainable. But even with Russell, if he's the one that goes, the Broncos have to be able to take some pressure off him, kind of fight that rush coming from the Jets. They sack quarterbacks at a really high rate, and they bring pressure with just 4 guys. But if you're able to run the football a little bit and kind of get those guys on their heels, it's going to help Russ. It's going to set up play action, maybe some easy throws that don't require him to stand in there and take a hit. That's all critical. And to kind of look at how does this offense get going and avoid the feast or famine mentality, getting the run game going is a big part of that.
Aric, looking at this defense, how do you expect them to try and slow down this Jets offense, specifically Breece Hall, who's had a really impressive start to his rookie season?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Broncos will be familiar with this offensive scheme, which helps because Michael LaFleur, of course, the brother of Matt LaFleur in Green Bay, that's the same system that Nathaniel Hackett kind of comes down from. So they're going to know this scheme. They've got to prioritize stopping the run, though. I think if you let the Jets run the ball effectively and get in these 2nd and shorts, 3rd and shorts, kind of stack up the plays the way that the Chargers did last week, that's where there's the chance of, one, the game shortens now, and so there's fewer chances for your offense. If you get behind, that puts you in a little bit of a bind. It's going to wear down your defense. So what the Broncos have to do is be good against the run early. If the offense can help out and get an early score, that would be great. But you've got to be good against the run, and you've got to put the Jets in 2nd and long, 3rd and long to make Zach Wilson throw the football because he's taken strides here in year 2, but he's still not hasn't shown yet that he's a top end quarterback MVP type player. So if you can put a young player in 3rd and longs, it's the same thing we talked about with Brett Rippon. That's not a recipe for success. So the Broncos have to stop the run first and then turn their attention to Zach Wilson.
Well, one guy on this defense, Aric, I really want to highlight is Baron Browning. I mean, he's really stepped up the past couple weeks in Randy Gregory's place. I mean, I just feel like he's been a shining star on this defense, specifically in the pass rush. What are your expectations for him on Sunday as he keeps on rolling?
Yeah, he's been really good, and I think kind of a surprise to me at least, just because when he wasn't starting, we didn't necessarily see it, and so I don't know if it was enough snaps or if just being a starter gives him a different mentality, but he's been really good the last couple of weeks. People have said he's kind of like that Micah Parsons type player that you can use in coverage, you can use off the edge. Now, obviously, I don't know that he's shown he's in that class with Micah quite yet, but what he's done has been impressive, and he's his pass rush win rate is really high. He's taking advantage of opportunities. He's all over the field. So really kind of encouraging things. And you would hope that if the Broncos, again, can get the Jets into these third and long situations, that him and Bradley Chubb should have a chance to tee off here and make some big plays.
All right, last one for you here. What do you think is really the matchup to watch on Sunday?
I think it's not necessarily a matchup between kind of two players, but just the quarterback position is for the Broncos is what you have to be focused in on. And it's kind of an obvious statement here. But if Russell Wilson plays, how effective is he? How do the Broncos change things schematically? Do they have to operate out of the shotgun a lot more? Because, it's tricky when you're under center to kind of take that drop, and it probably puts some pressure on your hamstring. So are they in the shotgun more? How does that impact things? Do they really try to run the ball? Do they play conservatively and lean on their defense? And then the same thing, if Brett Rippon plays, can he just kind of avoid the big mistake, work within the offense, make the throws when he needs to, and kind of lead this team to a win that it really needs?
Well, before you go, last thing, you got a score prediction for Sunday?
Yeah, I do think regardless of who plays, obviously I think it's worth noting the Broncos are better with Russell Wilson out there. That's no offense to Brett Rippon, but Russell Wilson's a future Hall of Famer. He's a Super Bowl champion. I'm hoping that he's able to go and kind of push through this. It sounds like he wants to. But I do still think it's going to be this tight, grinded-out game either way, no matter who the quarterback is. I don't suspect against a good Jets defense that you're going to break out for 35 points this week. But I do think the Broncos at home with that home field advantage find a way to keep the season alive because it's kind of a do-or-die moment right now for the Broncos. So I'll say 16-14, a close one, a nail-biter, but the Broncos find a way to get it done.
All right, I like it. Aric, appreciate your time today and your insight always.
You got it.
Well, that'll do it for today's episode of Broncos Now, Broncos Country. Thanks so much for tuning in today and every day. I hope to see you at Empower Field at Mile High on Sunday. But if not, I'll see you right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube on Monday following the game.